Morning, guys. Been back in the foundry quite a bit, and of course as winter gets closer, weather cools down, so it's nicer to cast, so I get more motivated to be casting about then. Been catching up on some of the casting forums, joined another casting forum, and just catching up on those discussions. So a couple of things, as well as some questions I've been getting through emails about part of my foundry setup. And I've covered most of it before, but I thought this is kind of an update and give you some of my reasoning and follow-ups on some of the stuff that I've done. Today I'm primarily going to ram up one main mold and probably a second one, and all I'm doing is molding today and kind of showing my setup for that with match plates and match plate vibrators. I probably won't cast until tomorrow. I've got about, I acquired 5 new little crucibles that I'm going to start using them slowly up, and these are all brand new. Like I say, I've got 5 of them, but they've been kicking around in a guy's garage for years. They were well stored, but they've still been kicking around. So I'm going to set this first one down into the furnace today and just fire it up and cure it. So I won't cast this today, but I'll go ahead and get this crucible cured today, and then probably in the morning while I'll fire up the furnace and cast these 1 or 2 molds is all I'm probably going to ram up today. So one of the discussions, well, several of the discussions on one of the forums is about match plates and then match plate vibrators. I feel for me, for my setup, I've pretty much got my setup perfected in that respect, and I'm probably never going to substantially change it. I've showed them before. I use Steve Chastain match plate vibrators. For those of you that are not familiar, this is a match plate. And what it is your patterns, which you can cast loose, but these are mounted permanently on here. I've already got sprues and runners on this side, although on this particular pattern I've got more gating than I need, but they cast up so nice that I'm going to leave them that way probably. I cast all my own hardware for them, and then these are the match plate vibrators that go on them. So it's quicker than hand molding these. And I'm going to show you today just how fast it is with this particular mold. Now this is flask hardware, is what these are, and it's a set of 4. Now I've got 2 of these. One of them has larger flask hardware on it for half of it, because for larger flasks like this one, why, there's one that's a little bit narrower this way and then a wider one. So for some of the smaller flasks that I've been building lately, I want a complete set of these smaller ones. So rather than casting 2 sets of them to get 1 set of flask hardware, I just made another match plate that does both of them on one. The original match plate looks like this right here, and we've got larger hardware here. Dimensionally, width-wise, size of the post and everything are exactly the same, but the base mounting plates are different on them. Like I say, two wider ones and two narrower ones. So my match plates are all, I turn them in batches. I've got a stack sitting back here. I don't know if these are going to show or not. I've got a stack of them sitting back there. There's 14 or 15 of them, I think. I've got one up on the wall. When I set these up there, again, I've got a match plate set up with this hardware on it, which is 4 match plates to hold alignment. So I cast all of my flask hardware now if I'm putting them on wooden flasks. So I've got a template set up, so I cut these, and these are, for me, most of what I'm doing. And I vary these a little bit depending on if we're doing some oddball stuff. But primarily I use a match plate that's about 14 wide and about 20 and a half long is about what they are. And then I've got a template, router template, so I just buzz the edges and cut out for the vibrator and all that stuff. So I mark them up here on what flasks they go in. This one is primarily the number 2 flask, which is what I'm going to cast it in today. And this one also is a very close match I can cast on in my number 3 flask, which is the one that I just had down here. Most of my flasks, and I will vary them, I'll usually build at least 2 in each size. Most of my flasks' internal dimensions are about 12 inches long and 9 3/4 or 10 inches wide. Those are internal dimensions. And I can do most of what I want to do in that. Now I've got several other flasks, and usually they're flasks that I built earlier that are quite a bit larger for things like my shaper guards and stuff like that. So, match plate vibrators. There's been quite a bit of discussion. There's been several designs and everything. This is a match plate vibrator that I build. And casting wise, they come off of a match plate, which is this one right here. And we've got the outer housing, which is this casting, and it gets a steel piece of, I think it's 2-inch pipe cut inside, and that's the race that the bearing runs around in. And then this is the cap on here. And all of the things, like there's 4 holes in the top to let air escape, those are all, they're marked where they go. Same way on the back of the top casting. There's the bolt hole that bolts it to the, or the divot where you drill a hole for that, and then the bolt fits in there. This is a Steve Chastain designed match plate vibrator. And a lot of my early stuff I mimicked what he did and worked off of his books. I've made a couple of changes to them. Primarily, I put a little aluminum cap on them, which is just cut out with a hole saw, and I bend them up. I build batches of these, and it keeps the sand from falling down inside and plugging up those holes in the middle. They take a 5/8 ball bearing, is what goes in them. And the ball bearing just drops in there, and it rotates around with air being shot into this end through ours. You have to be fairly careful about orifice sizes and locations, but that's the way they go in there. There's a core that gets cast into these, and he says to use a baked core. I just use a green sand core. I find it works fine for these. This is the core box for that. The steel liner sits down inside there in the very bottom, and then I just ram green sand into the top. I've got them clamped together. I just take a couple of Irwin clamps, clamp them solid like that. When they're done, I wrap them apart, and you pull the 2 halves out, and well, you flip it over. I would ram them, flip it over, wrap it, pull that out, which leaves your core inside. It's sitting on a bench, of course. Then you wrap it to pull your 2 halves apart, and you've got a core left in the middle. And you just set it into the mold when you put the 2 halves back together. Works really well. This one could be tuned up a little bit now. I've used this for years and years. I don't know exactly when I built this, but it's been a lot of years that I've been building. I look on the wall, I've got at least a dozen hanging in here that all have match plate vibrators on them. And then they get just hung on the wall, so I don't have to change them out. I do have one of his valves that I've got on down here on the front of the bench that I use to release them, and I'll show you that later when we're vibrating them loose. And it leaks. I cast a couple of these, but I only machined out the one. I should redo it, but for the little bit that I need it when I'm wrapping sand, why it works well. So in operation, that's the action that they get. And they'll vary a little bit depending on how they were machined. But anyway, that's the way they all go together. So let me move this camera down, get this other stuff out of the way, and we'll ram up the casting. Now my sand may be getting a little bit dry, which is why I'm trying to cast as often as I do, because it's a little bit easier to keep your sand tempered the proper amount. My flasks are all set up virtually the same. I number them, and it goes on the right hand end. I've got the cutout on the cope for it to lift off. Well, that little graphite here. I do the cutouts normally on the right hand side. Solid end is on the left hand side, so it guides there. Once they're rammed with sand, they release just fine. And with the vibrator working, they work even better. But in use, like I say, I number them. They go to my right hand side. The vibrator always, if I can, if I'm just using one plate on each set of molds, it goes to my right hand side. I will normally mark on the other side the orientation on the flask, so that I know that they go that way. On the back, I will normally mark what they are, and then the date that I set them up. Flasks will go together. Proper orientation, just like that. We'll start off by ramming up the drag. And if I can quit fumbling around here. Alright, it's about 10 minutes after. I just refilled my parting, so it's full and falling all over. Now, I played with this match plate vibrator. I scaled it up with the idea that I was going to make an air-powered riddle. And I scaled it up so it took a 1-inch ball bearing. I think it was running in about a 6-inch piece of pipe, maybe. So I had a fairly substantial vibrator about yay big around. Did not work well. Eventually that casting, both those castings went back into the casting pot and got recast into something else. What I found was you had to put an awful lot of air to it, and it didn't really carry the inertia enough to do well. I've seen guys say that, well, you can add more ball bearings and everything. I've not tried that, but I don't think that's going to be true. I don't think it's going to work as well as just the one, because even though you're carrying more inertia, you've made more drag along the way, and I just don't think they'll work as well. I think this is, with a 1/5/8 ball in there, if you placed your orifices correctly and everything, I think it's just about perfect. So that's my take on it anyway. The sand may be getting a little bit dry. We'll see how these work out. Have a small follow board set right here. Now these were 3D printed patterns, and for stuff like this I find they work really well. This one could use to be sanded out one more time and have 1 or 2 more coats of shellac put on it, or a coat of paint. And I will probably do that, I just haven't got around to it. But it works so well because they last quite a long time, or they last as long, hopefully, as I'll ever need it. And you can build your draft right in, everything prints out pretty straight and everything. And you can add any lettering or things like that you want. So we've always done it with stick-on letters and things in the past, and the 3D printed stuff is just easier. It just makes things more convenient. I think I'm going to start playing with some lost foam a little bit here. I see some real advantages to some of the things I've either been prototyping, or even some of the things that I already do in green sand. I think I can do them quite a bit easier and probably quite a bit better in lost foam. So I think we'll probably be experimenting with that over the next few months, along with all the rest of our little projects. Recently I've been venting this mold just a little bit But my sand's also been a little bit wet, so I think I will probably not vent this. The sand's getting a little bit dry, so I think it'll work just fine. I'm going to use my little Dixie cup sprue extender. For stuff like this, it does work really well. I really do like it. Now, let's see. Let me move this down just a little bit so you can see my little knee valve here. It sits down right here. Wish it depresses it. Valve's built into the back. Like I say, it leaks. I can hear it leaking out now, and it leaks on by. So, like I say, I need to rebuild the other one. I've got another one already cast. Need to build it, but I haven't been motivated enough to do it. So, all we got to do, that goes on there like that. There's our mold. Now there's been some contention about how much vibration action you really need on these. And a guy that does a lot of wax foam stuff, and I think has an awful lot of knowledge on just in general foundry stuff, says that you don't want as much as you do for vibrating your lost foam sand, which is not a bonded sand. And I tend to disagree with that. I think if you've got good alignment pins that align within reason, as long as you're not being too aggressive with your vibration of it, your alignment pins are going to hold it in there, so it's going to loosen it, and you're going to get a pull just like this. See if we can't look down in there. I think that's a pretty good view of that, and that is just nearly a perfect pull right there. So we take and we set that back together. And there's a completed mold, with the exception of my little Dixie cup pouring sprue on those. And I'll make those up here in a bit again. And I think when we started ramming this mold, it was 10 minutes after. And if we dig our watch out and look at it, it's now 18 minutes after. So it took us all of about 8 minutes to ram up that mold. So to me, you can't beat that speed and efficiency. Now, yes, you've got some time dialing in your patterns and figuring out what's going to work right and everything. But there again, this is going to be I'm gonna go out on a limb and say this is going to be virtually a perfect casting. So there's where we're at with this. I think I'm going to go ahead, since I'm playing here and it didn't take me any time at all. I think I'll go ahead. I've got to cut some inserts to go for match plate vibrators. I think I will go ahead, cut a couple of those, and then I'll ram up one of those real quick. Now, whether I show that or not, I don't know, but This things are going really well today already, so I may go ahead cure this crucible up, and we may run a pour later this morning or later today. I don't know, we'll see. Anyway, hopefully find that interesting, and we'll be back in a little bit here.